I want to introduce the next speaker, Jill Thiede, the Associate Dean of Trades and Engineering Technologies at NWTC.
Good morning. I'm excited to speak with you all this morning and to share a little bit about my story and how I ended up spending a good portion of the past 30 years in manufacturing. So as Lynn shares, the screen that some of the PowerPoints that I put together, I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I grew up right here on the west side of Green Bay. And a lot of what you're going to hear as I talk about my path through, engineering and manufacturing is you don't know where this is going to take you. So I think Tim and Jim's stories also reflect the same, that when you start on this path, what's really exciting is that there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of crossroads to make choices. And that's what makes it so exciting. So back when I was, in high school, similar to what I think it was Jim said, I really liked science, but I also really loved math. But I was also very much also into forensics and drama and doing presentations and that type of information. My mom was a teacher and my dad was an engineer. And so those were the two careers that I was most exposed to and I was thinking most about. But I knew one of the key things about me was that I loved solving problems and working on puzzles. And that's really what drew me into engineering. And so Lynn, the next slide. So after I graduated from high school, I went down to UW-Madison to their College of Engineering. And I spent the next 5 years going through a 4-year program to get my bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering. And part of why I took longer than what is, the typical time, the duration they tell you, is because I spent time doing co-ops and internships. And I will tell you that is one of the best decisions that I made in my life, was to take that time and go work for some companies and see what kind of work you could actually do as an engineer. Because that information really helped me make good choices in the future. So I spent 2 summers out in upstate New York, in Rochester, New York, with Eastman Kodak, 2 summers and a semester, which was fantastic. I worked on digital sensors and imagers, things I had never seen before. And when I would come back to school, I would see how that project work really tied into the learning and the courses I was taking. My final summer before I graduated, I went out to California and I spent a summer out in the San Francisco Bay Area working for Hewlett-Packard and got an opportunity to see some other new technology. When it came time to graduate, it was interesting because I ended up going with Procter & Gamble right back in Green Bay, Wisconsin. But it was this great opportunity for me to work there in manufacturing. So Lynn, next slide. And what was, from an electrical and computer engineer, you'd be surprised to say, what did you do? I helped make toilet paper. If you look at the machine on the bottom of the page there, that is your typical machine that makes toilet paper or paper towels. It literally has thousands of devices that are used to make toilet paper and paper towels. It's an incredibly complex piece of equipment. And as an electrical engineer, I was working with a team of 12 electrical technicians, and as different devices would have problems or would fault or would fail, we were solving those problems on a daily basis to keep that equipment running as efficiently and effectively as possible, making as much toilet paper, making as much Charmin and Bounty as it possibly could. We also worked on doing preventative maintenance. So you'll hear a little bit more about that in the future, but preventative maintenance, trying to make sure that we that we could solve the problems, identify things that were going to be failing, and get those changed out. Working with people, when we talk about those soft skills, the ability to listen to others and help get a group of folks all pulling in the same direction, all trying to make sure we have the same goals, was some of the most key skills I had there. After 5 years, I moved to Cincinnati. Next slide. And there I got to work with a team to actually lead some of these big projects to install those pieces of equipment. So I was working with projects that were, about $1 million projects and helping develop some of the schedules to determine what was all the equipment, what were all the skills people would need, what would be the actual raw materials we would need, and develop all of those schedules and those layouts. I think Jim talked about that as well, making sure everything fits into the building the right way. And then one of the most fun things that I got to do as an engineer was help lead those startups. So we would install that equipment, and it would go from just being a bunch of equipment to actually running and making a product. And then I could see that product on the store shelves, over at Walmart or at Target. And that was really exciting. With that project work, when you think about the places I got to go, I did projects in Pennsylvania, in Missouri, California, Georgia. I got the opportunity to go all around the country helping install and start up that equipment. One of the other really cool things is in this global world that we're living in with, economies that go across all of our national borders, I got to go to Italy, and we purchased some of our equipment from an Italian vendor, as well as to Germany, and get to meet some, of our vendors in Germany. And so when you think about those skills about being able to listen and communicate, understanding how to work across cultures is really important. Next slide. Similar to what folks were saying, I also felt like I needed more knowledge and I needed more skills as I was going on this journey. So I went back to school. At this point, I was living in Cincinnati, Ohio with P&G, and I went back to school 2 to 3 nights a week to get my master's degree in business. And that was great. I got a better understanding of profits and losses and balance sheets. When I was in engineering school, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that. But going back for my master's allowed me master's in business, that additional 2 to 3 years of training helped me better understand the full business. The other cool thing is while I was going to school, I got to do a week-long seminar in Barcelona, Spain. And then the next year, I got to do a week-long seminar in Toulouse, France. Again, learning how to work across cultural boundaries and talk to folks from different areas. Next slide. So now I had been gone from Wisconsin for about 5 years, and I missed it. So I was looking for opportunities to get a little closer to home and use a little bit more of my business degree, and I moved into marketing. Marketing is where you help develop the products with the product development folks to meet the customer needs. So you're working with the sales team and you're working with product development. So I was working on putting together videos and information that we could use to help sell the equipment and really understand what are those equipment needs. And during that time, I was living and working in Mequon, but my bosses were down in South Carolina. So I'd be traveling down there every 6 to 8 weeks. And I also was taking regular trips to North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina where the mills were, where we actually made the products that I was helping to sell. And then I'd also go to some of our customer sites around the country. Next one. So finally, as I was working down in Milwaukee, right near Milwaukee in Mequon, I got the opportunity to come back home to Green Bay and work for Paper Converting Machine Company in technical sales. So now I'm using my engineering degree, understanding how equipment works, and helping to sell this equipment to other engineers. So here I was selling equipment that was anywhere from $450,000 to one project that I sold that was $26 million. And that included a lot of equipment to make toilet paper and paper towels. I would visit a lot of the companies, get to understand what their needs were. I would help negotiate the deals and determine what all equipment would be included, how much would be paid, all those business terms. Because I was an engineer, I could help write those specifications so it was crystal clear exactly what we were going to be providing them. One of the more fun things that I got to do was doing presentations at technology conferences down in New Orleans and in Miami. And the other thing that I was working on is working on rebuilds of existing equipment and helping them use their existing equipment. But by adding new controls and new computers, we could make that equipment much more efficient. And during that time, I got the opportunity to visit a lot of different places, including Australia, Germany, Poland, Italy. But the main places I got to visit were Tulsa, Oklahoma, Chester, Pennsylvania, which is a small town outside of Philadelphia, and Beach Island, South Carolina, where there's not a beach nor an island. So I spent a lot of time in mills where they make the toilet paper and paper towels. But it was this great opportunity to get to work with customers. Next slide. Then in my last 2 years at Paper Converting, there was an opportunity to start working with a team of engineers and looking at Industry 4.0. That's a term you may hear when folks talk about manufacturing. It is what is considered our fourth industrial revolution. And we are just, we are coming into this fourth industrial revolution. If you remember back in your social studies, the first one was the mechanization, starting to use mechanics and assembly lines. The second one was when we added power and started now adding those conveyors that NERCON makes. The third is back in the 1980s and 90s when we started adding computers, programmable logic controllers, when we added that into our manufacturing process. And now Industry 4.0 is where we're taking all of this computer capability to store data, to get that data from the equipment and use that data to improve processes. Next slide. So some of the key things that you'll hear about when we talk about Industry 4.0 is that it's not necessarily about reducing the amount of people in manufacturing, but what we need are people with new skills. We need skills to be able to work with computers and take that data and make things happen. You'll hear about things like the Internet of Things or augmented reality or cloud computing. And this is all part of how we get data from the manufacturing floor and be able to use that to solve problems and make manufacturing more efficient, higher quality products, and more productive. Next slide. And that's what led me then to my final position that I'm currently in, is working at NWTC. And that here I'm working with our engineering technology programs that you see listed. And all of those are about how do we provide the skills that are going to help make people successful in manufacturing and in careers going forward with this new Industry 4.0 technology. So we provide both certificates and 2-year associate degrees that help people get those skills necessary so that they can be leading in manufacturing going forward. Next slide. So some of those key programs that you'll see here, these are 2-year programs coming out of high school. You can see we've got the biomedical degree. After 2 years, we have 100% placement of our students who completed that degree, and they come out making about $50,000 a year. We have our electromechanical program that has almost full placement at $62,000 a year. So if you go to my final slide, just want to try to make sure folks know that there are some great opportunities in manufacturing. I have had an incredibly interesting career in the last 30 years, getting to visit a lot of places through a career in manufacturing. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Jill. I have one when you were talking about when you were doing marketing. And I know that we have terms like marketing and advertising and graphic design. Are those all the same thing, or do they do a little bit different things?
They all do a little bit different things, all working together to try to sell the products. So marketing tends to be a little more focused on what products are going to be needed by the customer. So you're understanding the customer needs and you're understanding what can we provide. So you're really that person who brings those two things together. Advertising is saying, okay, now we have a product. How do we sell it? Let's get the information out there to people and sell it. What are the messages we need to be telling our customers? And those graphic designers are the folks who really figure out how to take that message that advertising says is the right message, and how do you put that in a format that really appeals to people and lets them see that message and it jumps out at them from the screen or the page or however you're connecting. So again, there's all these different, for every person, hopefully there is one of these fits of the skill set and the needs in terms of the work that can be done.
Great. Allison?
I don't see any questions in the chat, so please, we have a little bit of time left. If you do have a question or two, we would love to be able to ask Jill. And Jill, for me, the takeaway I got, which I appreciate, so the concept of engineering there's different definitions of engineering, and sometimes people may lose sight of that. There's that hands-on component. There's the business office side component. There's a marketing side. So that's great, I think, for folks just to realize that engineering is a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, I really think that's really important. To me, engineering is all about solving problems. And you can do that in so many different ways. Engineers aren't just the people who are doing designs behind a computer sitting in an office. A lot of time, engineers are people out there solving problems on the manufacturing floor. Or an engineer can be in there selling products and becoming a technical salesperson. Or an engineer could be writing the technical documentation that helps people understand how to use this equipment. So if you like math and science and solving problems, but there's other stuff you like too, and you don't want to just sit in an office for 40 hours doing design, engineering can still be a fantastic degree, a fantastic skill set to get to take that into all kinds of different careers and opportunities. It's really about learning how to solve problems and then taking that to a number of different places.